Hey there everyone, welcome back to the Bitcoin SV Train channel. I'm John, and I've got a really cool interview for you today. It's Brendan Lee, aka CoinstorageGuru on Twitter. He's made a bunch of videos explaining how Bitcoin SV scales, how people are going to use it, and he's just become the new head of technology at Faia Corporation, which is a management and consulting firm. So anyway, without further ado, here it comes. Later. Brendan Lee, welcome to the show. It's good to meet you at last.
Thank you very much, John. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you today.
Yeah, I've been checking out some of your videos on Streamanity and on YouTube as well, and I think you did a pretty good job of explaining some of the technical back end of Bitcoin SV, which I totally didn't understand before I saw that.
That's all right. I think my experience has been that if you don't understand it first, keep bashing your head against the problem, and eventually you will get there. And there's always like a watershed moment where you'll realize something, and all of a sudden about 10 different pieces will fall into place. And so that's what I'm always looking for. Like, where is the penny that you need to make the whole machine work? So,
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are. Actually, I'm going to come back to this a bit later, but yeah, a lot of people are confused about how exactly BSV is going to scale, and I think your videos do a good job of that. But anyway, before we go into that, I want to talk a little bit about you and that really nice mountain background that you've got behind you there. That's a real picture that you took yourself last week, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So this is from Bali, and so I actually went there with a family for a family vacation, and it just so happened that while I was there, George Samuels, who is the CEO of Faia, which is the company, the consultancy that I've just joined, was also in Bali, and so he and I were kind of looking for a way to catch up that didn't sort of impinge on his meetings, which were basically all day. And I found this tour, which was a trek up Mount Batur to see the sunrise. And so he and I met at about 9 o'clock at night, snatched about 3 hours of sleep. And then at 1 a.m., a guy came to the villa where I was staying and picked us up and drove us to Mount Batur. And at 3 a.m., we started walking up this mountain. And, you know, it was a pretty intense climb. It took a good 2.5 hours, and you know, the last half was pretty much a goat scrabble up a kind of a lot of volcanic ash, obviously, because it's a volcano, and so it made the path quite slippery in places. But you know, the payoff was pretty amazing. I have a whole sequence of photos of the sunrise, and this one in particular is a panorama that shows the ocean in the background with the sun and some clouds, and then another mountain off to the side, and just it's a beautiful photo. And I just took it on a mobile phone. Like, it's not, wow. I didn't carry any special camera equipment up there with me, but you know, phones, I guess, are getting so good these days that yeah, it's a great photo. I'm thinking of putting it on a canvas or something at some point. Yeah.
So tell me, I have a little experience climbing volcanoes. In fact, just one. I climbed Mount Fuji about 15 years ago, and I swear I am never doing it again. Is this something you would do again?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I really enjoyed it. I've been having a lot of trouble with my knees, and this was no different. I'm still kind of recovering from this, but yeah. You know, it was such a it's great to just get out and leave technology behind. You know, we got up to the mountain, there was no mobile reception, there was no pings, no dings, no sort of distractions from just enjoying the view and the fact that we were kind of 2,500 meters up and breathing this ultra fresh air and watching the sunrise. You know, that was kind of, I'd definitely do it again.
Right. Yeah. Is coming down really tough? Because it's, if you've never climbed a volcano, it's kind of like walking through sand. So like, it's not tough, you know, climbing rocks or anything like that, but you're by the time you get down, like you really want a knee reconstruction or something.
Yeah, coming down was definitely for me the harder part. But I was pretty amazed. Like while we were coming down, and I got to shout out to the Balinese. Like they were carrying like big bags of drinks and food and all kinds of stuff up the mountain to sell to people. And then when we were coming down, I was kind of doing this like short step little plod all the way down. They were sprinting, like they were literally running down the mountain, which I couldn't believe. But yeah, very, very impressive.
Well, I remember getting to the top and there was a guy at the top in a wheelchair, and I thought, yeah, okay, I'm not going to complain at all after that. I have no idea how he got up there, but he did it. He was one of the first.
Wow. Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, you've been in Bali, and the big news is you've just started as head of technology at Faia. So
yep.
I think I want to go into your background a bit first before we talk about Faia. Sure. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about how you got to be here. You were kind of a latecomer to Bitcoin in the overall scheme of things, weren't you?
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, I heard like everybody who's here now says, oh, you know, I first heard of Bitcoin in 2012 or 2011 or whatever. When I think the first time I ever heard about it was I get Slashdot emails, and I got an email from Slashdot, and it said, oh, Satoshi Nakamoto has released Bitcoin and whatever, and I really didn't think about it. Then I kept sort of seeing it come up, and I remember talking to a friend of mine about maybe buying some once when it was about $10, and then Mount Gox happened, and we were kind of looking at each other and going, gee, glad we didn't get into that. And then in 2017, I was working, or 2016 even, I was working on I was working in the battery industry, and part of what we were trying to do was build micro vehicles that were electrically powered and that used a microtransaction billing model to charge the drivers to rent the vehicles. And so they would come into like a depot where we had a couple of hundred vehicles and pay sort of small amounts of money to rent the vehicle for the day. And then whoever they carried in the taxi would pay them, and that would be their income. And I started looking into other methods of doing it because the way it was being managed was all with cash. And so this was in the Philippines, and you know, we were aware that it's very hard to track what happens to that cash occasionally. And like the guys we were working with had some very clever systems that they were using that used SMS messages to tell the vehicles that the driver had paid the money. But we were seeing that there were means for things to happen that meant that people had to pay more money, and it wasn't great. And I sort of stumbled upon Bitcoin as a way to do this, but when I was looking at it, I was like, well, it's completely impractical because the fees were, you know, these guys were paying $2.50 to drive a vehicle for the whole day, and for them to pay an extra 50 cents or $1 in fees. So I'd even started looking at, well, what if you could do it with some sort of other blockchain, but never really seriously. And then the price of Bitcoin started to do this, and I thought, well, I need to get into this. And so I bought a bunch of different stuff. And then the battery company sort of fell apart, which was a bit disappointing. And I came out of that. Well, I first got into BTC. I bought some BTC, some Ethereum. I actually bought that after the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, and then started. When the battery company was sort of imploding, I found myself with a lot of spare time, and I was in a big office with that was empty apart from myself. And so I just basically, for about 3 months, I did nothing but learn Bitcoin, and I kind of found myself totally captivated by the idea. And once I realized what it was and realized how important it was for this to become real and for it to be spread everywhere and for everybody to be able to use it, that's when I really got into researching how it works. And, you know, pretty quick, like it was pretty quickly, I realized that BTC was actually engineered to fail, and that Bitcoin Cash was now carrying the torch of what Bitcoin was meant to be. But it wasn't even that it was Bitcoin Cash. It was just that it's Bitcoin, which is the protocol. Yeah. And I was very lucky. I managed to find myself in some developer forums and got to meet Steve Shatters and caught up with him a couple of times in Brisbane before he moved to London. And really through talking to him and on Reddit and in these forums, really sort of worked out the landscape, and that even within Bitcoin Cash, there was still these kind of disagreements. And I've always sort of come down on the side of whatever is going to enable this to get into the hands of the most people possible. Yeah. And that obviously is scale. And, you know, when you look at the block size debate, there's really no question that 1 megabyte blocks is going to fail. And there's even no question that 32 megabyte blocks, which is what they have on Bitcoin Cash at the moment, is nowhere near enough to do even like a corporation. Like, you can't do one corporation with that. You need massive scale, you know, and like people say, oh, terabytes. Well, even terabytes, that's really just the beginning. That's when you get to a point where you can say, yeah, you can all start to use this right now. But it's not until you get like a few kind of orders of magnitude beyond that it really becomes what I think the original design was, which is like, you know, the Metanet and this whole new means of exchange of not just money, but information, a means of storing your own data and owning your own stuff online. And that's something that we've really not been able to grab in time before the corporations really took it away from us. And this is really our means to take that back, I think.
Yeah, and like Bitcoin BTC was originally, like the new concepts that BSV's introduced make it just all that more complicated for people to understand, I think. Like we can talk about benefits of the Metanet, but I think a lot of people aren't really sure how that's all going to work and how they're going to use it, which is what you're working on now, I think.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that people, I mean, I think that at the core of it, people don't really need to understand how the Metanet works.
Right.
Like they don't really understand how the internet works, yet they're still able to go out and use, you know, email and Facebook and all these kinds of things. They don't have to understand how domain name services tell their computer where to go and all this kind of stuff. They just have to know, they type facebook.com into a browser and it provides them with a user interface. And so I think the job for us over the next, you know, probably 3 to 5 years is to build that level of user interface, that level of simplicity as a layer on top of the complex Bitcoin part. Yeah. And so I think, yeah, what I'm going to be trying to do at Faia is to show developers and companies how Bitcoin functions and how they will best be able to leverage it into their products, workflows, and build businesses around microtransactions and pay per use data and things like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sort of user-driven features as well that the developers originally didn't intend. I think, you know, when Twitter first came out, there were no @ marks, there were no hashtags, that kind of thing. You know, it was the users who decided to use it that way. You know, having conversations, having threaded conversations, and then the Twitter devs added that later. So I think people also, even if they don't understand the back end, they will insert their own sort of front-end elements to it as well, which become part of the system. So I'm hoping people will do that with the Metanet too. They'll find use cases that maybe even the developers didn't think of.
Oh, 100%. Like, I think, you know, people are so creative. And like I've spent a lot of time working in places like Southeast Asia and China and, you know, the Philippines. And one of the things I'm constantly amazed by is you'll walk up to something like a machine and you'll see something being used and you'll think, oh my God, I never thought I would see that. Like, that is not what this is for, but that's how it's being used. And it makes so much sense. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to start to see people doing things with the Metanet and doing things with Bitcoin that are going to shock us, not just by how simple they are, but by how obviously efficient they are compared to the way it was done before. And, you know, all we need for that to take place is to bring people into it and to show them the basics, and they'll make their own journey through it. And that's, you know, that human creativity. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what people start doing with Bitcoin, because there's so much potential. You know, like there's literally nothing that you can look at that we do in the world today that you can't apply Bitcoin to, and I think achieve efficiency dividends and better ways of not just running a business, but of engaging with people, of giving them ownership of their interaction with you as a retailer or as a provider of a service. So
yeah, it's the street finds its own uses for things.
Yeah, that's right.
That old cliche, which like a lot of cliches, is really true.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about Faia, because is that a Southeast Asian based company?
So the name is Tongan, I believe. So George Samuels, who is the CEO of the company, his background is Tongan, and I believe it's their word for. Well, I don't actually know what it is actually for sure, but I think it's around kind of community and building things. It doesn't actually mean fire, as in the fire that we burn things with, but it sounds like fire. And by bringing fire to a business, you know, you can really, it's a way of, for one of the things that they do, or that they're focusing on doing very well, is to show businesses how to work better together and to root out toxicity within the business process, and to enable a real community to come together within a company, and by doing that to achieve more than originally, you know, they were aiming to. And so they have like, I'm participating now in what they call the Fire Pack, which is like a productivity focused work group, where basically every day you go and create a list of things that you're going to achieve, what you're happy about, like what you're grateful for, like. And it's really a way of looking at work that I've never really come across before. It's kind of always been like, you're in the salt mines, you just go, get as much done as you can. Whereas this, you're kind of forced to step back at the start of every day and reflect on, what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what do I need to do today to best make that happen, and what else in my life am I happy about? What am I glad for? And actually, when you even just spend a couple of minutes a day reflecting on that, it puts you in a better frame of mind, and it allows you to focus better on what you're trying to do, because you want to achieve that, so you can be glad about that tomorrow. You know, so maybe the thing that you're glad about today is all of the stuff that you got done yesterday. And normally you don't even think about that. You're just looking at what you've got in front of you and going, well, I need to achieve all of this. And by kind of stopping just for 5 minutes and thinking about that, it kind of changes your whole mood. Yeah, it's really hard to describe, but it's a very different way of coming at work. I'm really looking forward to implementing it myself. Now, that's not particularly what I'm here to do, but part of what they're expanding into is now to build Bitcoin services into the offering. And so to train companies, not just how to work better as a team, but how to bring Bitcoin into that business. And I mean, I'm definitely of the perspective that Bitcoin is probably the greatest communication and community building tool that we've really had at our disposal in recorded history. So, melding that with these great kind of community tools, and not just like wide community, but small inside company community workflows and things is very powerful. So yeah. I'm very much looking forward to working with both sides of that.
And so Firebrand builds itself as a management consultant company. And yes, I know it's the management consultant's job to sort of come in and look at that meta business and, ask things like, why are you doing this? And, how could you do it better? That kind of thing. I used to know a bunch of people who worked for McKinsey and Accenture and places like that. And I always found those people had kind of a unique perspective on life. They would always look at things a different way to everyone else, and they could look at a business from a different way to everyone else, which is kind of why they get hired by those places and then trained. So is that how you're doing things at Faia as well? Like your job is to show the how and the why of Bitcoin.
Yep.
Right. And how many people are actually working there?
So to date, it's still pretty small. There's only 4 of us at the moment, and so there's myself, who is here to. So George has been around the Bitcoin community for a long time. I think he was telling me the other day that he first met Craig in around sort of 2012, 2013. And he's a technical person himself. He's written code, knows how to write code, knows how to develop, but he's taken a different kind of trajectory around helping teams who are working in technical or working to deliver technical products to improve their efficiency through community. And so I think that's really the main focus of the company, or has been until now the main focus of the company. And what I'm hoping to do is to widen that scope into not just helping companies improve their processes, but actually to introduce completely new ways of doing things at a technical level. So being able to come into a company who's, who delivers a digital product, or even like a physical device or product, and showing them how to leverage the power of Bitcoin to make that or to engage with their customers better, and to make the customer experience of using their product or service better. And I think that's really one of the most important things that we need to do to widen the visibility of Bitcoin. Because when you start talking to people about Bitcoin, mostly what they think of, it's just fake money, it's drug money, or it's whatever. But actually, it's this absolutely fantastic tool that, and especially with Bitcoin SV. With Bitcoin SV, we have something that no other blockchain network has, which is the ability to start pushing large amounts of data onto the network, and to use that data to help people engage. And I think we're already starting to see it happening very, very quickly with applications like Twitch and Bitstagram, people just sharing photos and using those large transactions as a means to build, I guess, communities. And
yeah, we're sort of at that stage now in Bitcoin where people are mainly replicating services that already exist. I'm looking forward to the time when we start to build things that couldn't exist without Bitcoin. You're exactly, right. Instead of being like the Instagram with Bitcoin, the Twitter with Bitcoin, even though those things are worthy and useful. So
I think I'm really looking forward to a much wider application of the Metanet, and I can really see, I can actually see that it's actually going to make things much more simple to build, just simply through the way that. So one of the things that I really love about Bitcoin is because everything is transmitted on the network in plain text. So it means that the security of your product is right at the edges of where everything is coming in. Like you don't need secure sockets, you don't need servers, you don't need a whole back end system, because it's already there.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin can function as the back end of just about anything that you can imagine. So even for those existing, or those things that replicate what's already out there, I think what we're really going to start to see is they're very quickly going to overtake those things that are out there in terms of their usability, and in terms of the level of engagement that they can pull from people. Like, so I think about Twitch, and while when you look at it, it's just a Twitter clone, but it's not, because you're paying money. And when you like something that somebody has created on Twitch, you're paying them.
Yeah.
And that's something that you were never able to do with Twitter.
Yeah, that's right.
It's important to see that there's already something more there. And while the interface is still a little bit simple, you can't, I guess they've already got replies, but you can't follow people yet, and you can't build groups and whatever. But they're going to get there. And when they do, it could happen really quickly that we see a mass exodus of people. Certainly, first from the Bitcoin SV community, I'm really looking forward just to stopping Twitter. I think it's quite it's not a nice place for a lot of reasons, and to move somewhere where the value that you deliver is reflected by the value that people give you back, is really going to help people feel better about what they're doing on the internet, and give them back control.
Yeah, and I know Twitter is also the most loved and most hated social network of the Bitcoin SV community.
And I say that, but I still love using Twitter. Like it's a really easy way to engage people.
Yeah.
But also, it does have a lot of downsides. I spend a lot of time filtering out trolls and.
And I also don't want to criticize things like Bitstagram and Twitch. I don't want to call them clones of existing services, because I think it's kind of necessary to give people that thing, that service that they're familiar with the Bitcoin element, and you need that stepping stone to be able to move on from there. Like, if those services didn't exist, they might not know what to do with it. Whereas this, adding that feature gives them new ideas and probably sends them in a few new directions. So yeah, I don't want to just call them clones, because I think it's important that people do that first. And then Twitch and Bitstagram, they'll probably grow into something far bigger than Twitter, to the point where they're unrecognizable in 10 years' time.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And the thing that when you build it on the Metanet, it kind of enables you to grow it very fast, and with very little infrastructure. So instead of having whole teams of people focused on building a massive back end and keeping that secure, you can apply all of your effort into making the user experience as clean and as simple and as engaging as possible.
Yeah, and some of the videos you were making over at Streamanity were, the main topic was, how is data going to be stored on the Bitcoin SV chain? And I think that's where a lot of people fall down when they're thinking about the Metanet, because they're just thinking, how are these massive amounts of data stored? If we had something on the scale of today's internet, plus 10 years, where's all that data going to be stored, and how's it all going to be stored?
Well, I think so the problem that I think people have, and it's they look at the problem and they say, how would I do that myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are so few people out there who've ever been in a server room and ever been in a data storage facility that they really have no conception of how we handle data today, and how, you know, these big internet corporations, they literally have warehouses full of hard drives just for storing this data. And when you are monetizing that really effectively by mining Bitcoin,
right.
and not just by mining Bitcoin, well, I mean, so there's two aspects to this. So there's the mining of Bitcoin, and those guys have to manage the whole throughput of the network, and they have to store the entire UTXO set. And if they're doing an archive service, they have to store the entire history of the blockchain.
Yeah.
And people kind of look at that and they go, well, when you get up to these crazy amounts of data, that becomes impossible. But really, the numbers aren't that, yeah, they look big, but when you view them against something like YouTube, so you go on YouTube, there's thousands of copies of the same video, and they're storing all of those. There's also just oodles of junk, like, because it costs nothing to upload stuff to YouTube, people just make crap and they put it up there, and nobody ever watches it, but Google still keeps it. And
sounds like some of my YouTube videos, actually. Yeah,
that's right. And so one thing that happens is when you start charging people for the right to push stuff up there, then they're going to think twice about putting any old crap. Like, so I really actually noticed when I started using Twitch, you know, normally when you Twitter, you think nothing of responding just with an emoji or thank you or hey or whatever. Whereas on Twitch, you're like, well, hang on, actually that emoji, that's going to cost me 10 cents.
Right.
Do I need to spend that 10 cents? No, I don't. And so it actually filters the amount of information that we generate and push onto the blockchain. And especially for things like, you know, if currently Streamanity, they don't store the videos on chain, but I think eventually they obviously the plan is to do that. And when they do, to create an hour-long video and store that on chain, obviously you want to do that with the expectation that you're going to make more money from people watching that than it costs you to put onto the blockchain. So if you make a video and you probably spend, you know, maybe a couple of $100 worth of time making the video, and it then costs you another $100 to put it onto the blockchain, you're going to want to make at least $300 by charging people for watching it.
Yeah.
And you're going to focus on ensuring that that content is of a really high standard and is something that people are going to come back to again and again, and go out and say to other people, hey, you need to watch this. And so that's kind of the direction I've tried to take, is very much in the creation of very information dense, well-produced, high-quality content, because I can see that when I'm going to have to pay a lot of money to push that onto the blockchain so that it can be served out to people over the Metanet, that I'm going to need that capability and the skill to draw people in and have them willing to pay to consume that.
Yeah,
and so
we almost need like a cultural shift as well as a technical shift as well, because technological shift, because people have gotten so used to putting their content out there for free and then consuming it for free that
that's right.
As soon as you start to introduce any kind of payment model, they run away. Like newspaper subscriptions, things like that, they're not doing so well, or they're not doing as well as they maybe should if they'd been around forever.
Well, I think this is another thing that we can actually revisit very easily with Bitcoin. And I think that the problem with most of the newspaper subscription models that are out there is that it's like, it's always freemium. This is one of the things that I really don't like, is this freemium.
I'm glad you said that before I did.
Yeah.
I was about to say that I like freemium, but please tell me why I shouldn't, because I'm willing to be changed.
Yeah, so I use this service called Buffer, right, to preload tweets. And
a good example,
I think
yeah.
people have noticed my tweet, like I've kind of changed the tone of it since I started at Fire. I've really tried to come up every day just with a couple of here's something you can do with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that all in advance. So I always try to have kind of several days of tweets buffered so that I don't have to think about it. And the problem with Buffer is they give you 10 free tweets that you can push into the buffer. But then if you want to do any more than that, so say you want to do 20,
mm-hmm.
you have to pay $16 a month.
Right.
So the problem with that is that you pay $16 a month, but the guy or the corporation who's got a whole army of people loading 500 tweets into the buffer, they're also paying $16 a month. Right. And so for me, who's doing like one person feed, 10 tweets a week or whatever, that's completely, totally blows away any kind of like value that I can see that I would get for $16 a month. I don't think that's at all good value. And what I really want to see is instead of them giving me something for free to try to incentivize me to pay them that $16 a month,
mm-hmm.
just start charging as soon as I come on board. Like if I want to use Buffer, charge me 10 cents. Charge me 10 cents for every single tweet that I want to buffer, so that if I use it 300 times in a month, then it costs me $30.
Mm-hmm.
But if I only use it 30 times in a month, it costs me $3. And that's a much fairer and a much more, I think it's going to, when you start using it 10 times a month and it costs you $1,
mm-hmm.
and then you find it really useful and you start using it 30 times a month and it costs you $3, you really don't equate that with a huge, there's no difference in the value that you're getting. Whereas with the freemium model, I'm really reticent to pay $16 a month to
mm-hmm.
buffer my 30 tweets. But if I'm the guy who's doing 3,000 tweets a month, $15 a month is great value. And so I think they're missing out on a huge opportunity to totally tip the monetization model. And that's not just for Buffer. Like that's just the example I've been thinking about for the last few days. But like I did a video a while back on applications like Microsoft Office and Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
So these are applications where to even install them on your computer, there's a huge step. You have to pay like 150, or in terms of like Photoshop, sometimes or 3D design applications, you sometimes have to pay thousands of dollars.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you just want to do one thing, like for me, I'm kind of like, I like to draw renovation ideas for my house or whatever. I don't want to pay $1,000 to have the same capability as a guy who's using it 8 hours a day in some architect office. I just want to doodle.
Well, that's why Adobe's kind of moved to that Creative Cloud model where you pay them, $10 a month or $20 a month or something, and then you can have full access to all the features of Photoshop, Lightroom, all of those apps. It's kind of reasonably priced, I think, but they have tiered levels of payment you can make. So if you're a real pro and you need lots of storage, you pay extra for it. But if you're just a casual user, then it's not particularly expensive, I think. It depends. Like a lot of companies haven't really figured out the best price yet.
I would still argue that a better business model is
mm-hmm.
to charge me $1 for each new drawing I want to start.
Right. So that actually
don't make me subscribe to something that I might use for a month and then put down for the next 12.
Yeah. I have a question about that. It's going back to the early days of the internet when we all had dial-up and everyone was paying by the hour. I think the internet usage never really took off until we had broadband that was always on and everyone just paid a flat fee. So they didn't really have to think about when they were using it and when they weren't. Do you think that could be a problem for these models too?
Look, I don't think so. Like I think, and it'll be up to each company to kind of graduate how they handle it. So for someone who's creating, so if I'm just a casual user and I want to create edit one picture in Photoshop, maybe that costs me $2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm a professional who's using it on 20 images a day, well, the app would recognize that and give me like a cascadingly lower price per image, such that by the end of the day, when I'm doing image number 20, it's only costing me 10 cents or something like that. So
that's a good point.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing with Bitcoin is that you can have every single one of those images as an individual transaction. Like, you don't have to, the problem that we have with the legacy money system is that if you want to do a micro-transactional model, you still have to take a lump sum up front and hold it and draw down from that. You can only do one actual transaction every so often because of the high cost of processing with credit cards. Yeah. Whereas now with Bitcoin, you can cost effectively charge someone 1 cent for a service.
Yeah.
And,
at least,
and that's something that's never been possible before.
That's right, yeah. Well, at least with Bitcoin SV. So another thing I want to ask you about. So you're one of the roles that Faia will play is convincing companies to use Bitcoin. Yes. And by that I mean Bitcoin SV, of course. But I think you have that double problem going into a company and convincing them not only that they should use Bitcoin, but that Bitcoin SV is the real Bitcoin, when they've probably heard a lot of propaganda saying otherwise, from different sources. How are they going to deal with that challenge?
Well, I think then the job is on us to have our story really hammered out very well, and to be able to tell a compelling story about not really so much the history of Bitcoin. I don't really want to go in and try to tell them that, it was hijacked, and it's been engineered to fail, and all this and that. And
people stop listening when you start.
To me, it's a bit of a sob story.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go in and say Bitcoin SV is the original Bitcoin protocol on a network built to handle global scale. And it's only by using a network that has global scale that you get access to basically unlimited numbers of cheap transactions every day, as much as you want to use it. And you can go and try to do this kind of thing on BTC, but what you're going to find is that the costs of using that network are so high that basically any business model that you want to consider that isn't speculative trading is not going to work. And, even so they're trying to change it with the Lightning Network. I think it's very easy to show people that the Lightning Network actually doesn't function as a reliable means of sending money. And so it's only by using the network that is aiming for that global scale and creating an opportunity for everybody in the world to use it through massive scale. And that's really the only way to do it. That's what you need. And there's a really compelling story in that, and being able to demonstrate to them, look, this is the cost of a transaction. It's not going to really get that much more expensive than this. And look at all the amazing things that you can build into that.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. So yeah, I'm not really going in and saying, don't use this and don't use that, but use this. I want to say, use this, and here are the 10 great reasons why. And if they come back and say, well, but what about this? Then being able to also explain why that is a less compelling option than what we're trying to deliver. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that they keep the message positive like that, because if you go on Twitter, if you go on any other kind of social media, like, all you see is a lot of arguing. And like you said, sub stories, people complaining about things being hijacked, and key personnel being scammers, fraudsters, criminals, everything. It comes from all directions. I'm not saying it's all just the one camp either, but I think the network that's got the most positive message and can prove its compelling use cases is the one that's going to succeed in the end. And I think SV can do that. Just because it has 100%. The tech.
Look, I look at the technical roadmap, and I look at the people that we have executing that technical roadmap, and it makes me extremely optimistic for the future of Bitcoin on the Bitcoin SV network. I think there's an extremely robust plan, and the fact that the miners, and chiefly Nchain and CoinGeek, but you know, we're starting to see a lot more new miners entering the Bitcoin SV mining game. We've seen in the last few days, BTC Top have now started mining on Bitcoin SV, or BTC.com, I should say.
Right.
And there's suspicion out there that even Bitcoin.com has started mining BSV, but that's unconfirmed. But I think that's a recognition by those miners that they can see Bitcoin SV has a very strong future for them. And when you talk about a global infrastructure project, I think this is the core mistake that has been made with BTC, is in convincing all of the users that they should have a stake in building the network. And by having like a Raspberry Pi node at home, that they are somehow helping the security of the network, because it's actually the biggest Achilles heel of the network. And because they are holding back the development of the technology at the core of the network, which is miners and their ability to handle like a global load of transactions, when the time comes, I don't know if you watched my video on chain death.
I have.
It'll happen very quickly, and there's going to be very little that they can do to stop it.
Because it'll happen suddenly.
You know, if you lost 90% of the hash power on BTC, like if all of a sudden 90% of the hash power left and said, actually, we don't see a future in this, we're going to mine BSV, the network would die within a week. But if Bitcoin SV all of a sudden lost 90% of its hash power, because there is so much elasticity between the actual current demand for transactions and the capacity of the network, like there's oodles of capacity, it wouldn't matter if we lost 90% of the hash power, because the user experience wouldn't change. There's no reason why you would have to pay 10 times higher fee. Sure, your transaction is going to take a bit longer to confirm because there's only one block an hour or whatever. But is that really a problem? Like, I think people get so caught up on the idea that, oh, your transaction must confirm. But the reality is, once more than 90% of the network has seen it, it can't be double spent. Any attempt at double spend gets rejected. So, you know, there's a lot of misunderstanding being propagated out there about how the network itself actually functions. And that's at the core of what's happening in BTC. And I think it's very unfortunate that they have managed to kind of keep such a stranglehold on the narrative for so long. But I feel like we're actually starting to get through to some people now, and they're starting to see that decentralization is not what they've been told it is.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, voting in an election is not what you're told it is either, but it makes people feel like they're having a say in things when they're actually not. that's a whole other can of worms there.
Yeah,
but,
let's not.
I think your video on chain death, now that you mention it, I find that's a really important video to watch, and I think everyone should see that, because a lot of people aren't aware that could happen. So is that over at Streamanity?
Currently, it's only on Streamanity.
Right. And your channel,
I am sort of getting to the point now where I think that people aren't have. It's kind of anybody who's going to watch it on Streamanity already has. So it's time to move it across to YouTube and share it much more widely. So I'll probably do that within the next week or so, because I do think it's a very, very important thing for people using BTC to understand that small blocks, you know, they claim that high fees are a means to security, but it's totally the opposite. And the actual high cost of Bitcoin and the high fees on the network is its biggest weak spot. And it's been white-anted for so long that I think even if they did try to expand the block size, it would cause a network split, because so many people out there don't believe. You know, I mean, if the miners all decided to do it in unison, there's very little that anybody could do about it. You know, they can fork the Raspberry Pi network off, but they'll never find a block. You know, it would become a nothing very quickly. But I think it would destroy any credibility they have left, because for so long they've sold people on the idea that they can't do a hard fork. And the only means they have of actually increasing the block size is a hard fork. And so they surreptitiously introduce all of these things like segregated witness and different types of signatures and whatever. Like, they do it all through soft forks. And I think that's really the most disingenuous way of implementing these kinds of upgrades, because you end up with a situation, and it really came to the fore about 5 months ago. There was a bug that got found where if someone stitched together a block that had the same transaction in it twice and propagated it out to the network, every node, I think since version 12 up to version 16, would crash and go offline.
I remember that.
And when I actually started looking into that, I found that was like 96% of all of the nodes on the BTC network were vulnerable to that bug, simply because they've all been told for so long that, oh, well, because we do this through a soft fork, you don't actually need to update your hardware. You don't actually need to update your software. And I mean, that's just crazy. Like, how can anybody, like the same guys who are sitting there looking at their Bitcoin node and saying, oh, I don't need to upgrade my software because I'm self-sovereign and whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're the first guys going out and downloading the latest update for their Xbox. I don't get how badly, well, not badly, but like how kind of they've been sort of led up the garden path so completely. And to think that a global financial system is more secure because you dangle your Raspberry Pi off the end of it is completely ridiculous. This global financial system needs hardware and capabilities to support a global transactional load. And you can't service billions of people with 1 megabyte blocks. It's simply not possible. You cannot even give each person in the world 1 bit of data in a 10 megabyte block, even in a whole day of 10 megabyte blocks.
And the whole block size debate is kind of dead within BTC at the moment, because I think anyone who's going to argue against increasing the block size is already gone. And even now they've got people talking about reducing it. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but it seems crazy to me.
Like, it kind of, I just think that's, look, honestly, let them do it, because they will just prove to everybody that what we all know is that it's not going to work.
Yeah. And I hope they do, because it needs to be demonstrated in reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't think they'll have time to implement the shrink of the block size, because I actually think their days are pretty numbered. I don't think we will be sitting here in 12 months' time talking about BTC, except to say, wow, what an amazing disaster. Like,
all right, well, I'm going to timestamp that. This is it's what, the 2nd or 3rd of July 2019. See you in 12 months. All right.
Mind you, I said the same thing a year ago, so who knows?
I don't know. I know lots of people who are not using BTC anymore. These are people who were just mad Bitcoiners a couple of years ago, and they just refuse to use it now.
Well, they're told not to use it. So they're told that the only way to use BTC is to hodl.
Yeah.
Why would you spend your BTC? In 10 years' time, that $100 might be worth $1 million. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Because if nobody ever spent that $10, there's no way it would ever get to $1 million. I love using Bitcoin. I love paying people in Bitcoin. I love using Twitch. I love spending it at every possible opportunity, because I know that by doing that, I'm spreading it as far and wide as possible and making sure that the people who are building on Bitcoin are having the opportunity to monetize their effort. And I think that's, if you want to support Bitcoin, that's the number one way to do it, is to actually go out there and use Bitcoin services over services that do not use Bitcoin. If I could use Buffer or a Buffer-like service that used Bitcoin, I would switch in a second. that's why I put all my videos on Streamanity now, because I get to use Bitcoin and I get to be paid in Bitcoin. And there's nothing more. It's something that I'm actually pretty proud of. I haven't really been paid. I've been paid a little bit in Australian dollars, but only because of practical need.
Yeah.
But basically, most of the work I've done over the last 18 months has been completely paid in Bitcoin. So, yeah, I'm very, and as we move forward, I want to get that to 100%. I want to be paid only in Bitcoin and use only Bitcoin wherever I can. So,
yeah. And it's a wonderful feeling when that happens too.
Exactly, yeah. Because I know, look, I mean, ever since I first started reading about Bitcoin, like it spoke to me as something profound. This is as profound as the discovery of the wheel. Like this is going to change society more than I think we can understand at this point in time.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's so exciting to me and so important to be part of that. Yeah.
Well, very good. And I think that's an excellent point to end on. And if I had a mic, I would let you drop it on the stage at that point. But before we go, can you just let everyone know where they can follow you and see your latest? Because I think people are going to want to find out more after watching this.
Sure. So you can follow me on Twitter. I am at CoinstorageGuru, all one word. And so CoinstorageGuru was actually the company that I first started with in Bitcoin. I sell safe words, which is like a backup kit for your mnemonic seed.
Where can people find safe words?
I created a Twitter handle for that, so and I've just kept using it. So I am at CoinstorageGuru.
And is that CoinstorageGuru.com as well?
It's actually coinstorage.guru. There's no .com on the end, so it's just coinstorage.guru.
Right.
And if you go there, you can buy safe words. And actually, that's one thing I'm working on right now. I don't actually have a Bitcoin SV option to purchase it because coinpayments.net delisted it from their settings. So I'm working on actually creating a Metanet page where you'll be able to go and buy the product on the Metanet using Bitcoin SV and the money button.
Excellent.
But I'm not there yet. So
well, if people follow you on Twitter, they're going to hear all the latest anyway. You can post it there.
Yeah, that's right. And so you can follow me on Twitter, CoinstorageGuru. On Twitch, I'm just Brendan, but I don't think you can follow people on Twitch yet. But when
you can, have a Twitch account.
I'm just Brendan. And on Streamanity, I have a channel. It's just called Channel B.
Channel B, yes.
Yeah, and anything that I've done on YouTube is either under the BSV channel, which is run by my friend Shem, and he does such a wonderful job. Like he's tireless in his effort. And there's a few bits and pieces that are on other channels. So I've had a few chats with Daniel Krowitz before. But yeah, most of it is under the BSV channel. And anything that I release that's on Channel B on Streamanity will be released under the BSV channel on YouTube. So
excellent. All right then. Brendan Lee, it was great to talk to you today. And please come back again, maybe
thanks very much, John.
Hopefully not in a year from now, but maybe before then.
Had a really good time. So thanks a lot.
Great. See you later, guys.
No worries. Bye.